All right. StreamYard has lost access to your Facebook. Oops. Hang on just a second.
We're live and we have a new feature. And Michael is figuring out how we can go live on Instagram at the same time. And
okay, I'm just gonna roll. You're not talking. How do I get you to shut? Hang on. I think it was on my Facebook. All right, okay, now. Right. That is I'm calling on men.
It's not a real live stream unless there's technical issues.
There you go.
It's a KPI of live streams, actually.
All right, gentlemen. Yeah, that was it. Oh my gosh. Where is this?
what are you trying to figure out?
It's playing back somewhere to me. It's on.
People are already liking it. We should do more of this.
They're liking the match. Everyone. And, hopefully it keeps broadcasting. All right. Okay. Yes. Welcome back. This is Calling All Men. This is Michael Sky. I'm in Nairobi. I'm with my co-host, Hans Komain out of Medellin. And our guest is located in my old stomping grounds, favorite city in the U.S., Austin, Texas. We're going to introduce him in just a second. We are, by the way, streaming to his Facebook and YouTube page. So if you're a fan of Kevin or a friend of Kevin, big welcome to you. We're going to be interviewing this great man, talking to him about men and masculinity and the crisis that men and boys and, well, humanity are facing these days, or should I say the crises. But just to let you all know what's going on, we are part of the Calling All Men Summit. So we've interviewed 75 great men. We are getting to the heart of what men and boys are facing today. There are so many crises and challenges from, different segments of the male population have drastically increased suicide rates, overdose rates, male isolation and loneliness and sexlessness and failure to leave their parents' home and on and on and on. Men are really in it, and it's kind of taboo in a lot of circles to talk about men and boys having problems because some people think, oh, well, that means that you don't care about women and girls. But, I'm sure the sisters and wives and mothers of men and boys who are suffering know that if your man or a male that you love is suffering, then it deeply affects you as well. So we're here gathering around these issues, and we were live all last week, and this weekend, December 16 and 17, Saturday and Sunday, for 48 hours, we're live again for an encore weekend. So if you want to join us for all 50 interviews, go over to callingallmensummit.com. Hans can put a link in the comments there. Callingallmensummit.com. You can get everything, participate for free, watch all the interviews for free. And then right here on facebook.com/callingallmensummit, we have some more live streamed interviews with men. And Kevin is our first of the weekend, Kevin Orosz. And Kevin, this is a man who I've seen on social media here and there over the past few years. I've been interested in, men's work, coaching men, the challenges that men are facing. So Kevin is a coach, an entrepreneur, a performance philosopher, and student of humanity's myths. He is driven by offering his voice and presence to improve the lives of people all over the world, and has led retreats and spoken at masterminds internationally, teaching the art of polarity. Through his book, Sex, Masculinity, and God, The Trialogues, online courses, evolutionary men's work, and private mentorship, Kevin teaches others how to create more impact and success, igniting polarity in relationships, and claim their kingdom. Kevin, welcome to Calling All Men.
Grateful to be here, Michael and Hans. It's an honor. Love that y'all are doing this. We need more of it in the world, as we know.
Amen. Amen. Yes. So, Kevin, I would love to, one of the first questions I like to ask men is, from your own vantage point, working with men over the years and from your own personal life as well, on the front lines, as it were, of some of these crises, what do you see and understand that men are facing and men are struggling with today?
Yeah, we're in a really unique time in history. And I'd say across the board, when I work with men or couples, you know, these men of all ages, from teenage to their, prime to 50s and 60s, they're struggling to understand their role and purpose in society, in the tribe, and culture, which, to my knowledge, studying history, has never really been a factor. Like, men have always been protectors, providers, artists, creators, leaders of their women, their family, of their community, their village, and even of, entire social orders. And so what we have right now is a very sad state of the culture wars, or the woke mafia, whatever you want to call it, that seems to be determined to attack and confuse masculinity. And of course, this is bled into masculine feminine relationships. A lot of men are suffering in people pleaser, or what I call like the white knight, which is that shadow archetype of just palliative care and avoiding walking on eggshells. And this usually impacts their relationship with women. It often impacts their work as well, and their financial life. A lot of other men are struggling with addiction. I mean, we've all heard the stats around suicide, addiction, depression. Mental health is becoming more and more spoken about and open in many contexts, which is great. And I'm pro that. And we need to have a very serious discussion on why most violent crimes, suicide, drug use, domestic violence, sexual violence, is coming from men. And it's not that men are these evil, toxic beings that we need to, chain and suppress. It's that there's a systemic issue with the lacks of rites of passage and initiation for boys, and also the absence of the father, which obviously has been in homes, historically over the last century. But archetypally, the father archetype, that covering and protection of a masculine force for order, is missing from our world. And look around at the leaders of countries, look around at these economic and military leaders. How many of them are providing a good role model to younger men? And so we have a top to bottom kind of issue here. And luckily, the men's movement is gathering momentum, and I'm very bullish on the men's movement. I think it's going to come to define the next several decades as more and more men, step into work like this, like the Calling All Men Summit, and, this amazing network of people supporting men.
Yeah, as I was preparing this summit, I just went through all kinds of devastating stats. The 90-something% of those who fill our prisons come from fatherless homes, and the stats just go on and on. It's not the same. Kids who are raised by their dad, there's not much of a difference between that and a two-parent household with mother and father. But when the dad is missing, I mean, the statistics are just mind-blowing. So this narrative that, a father is kind of optional, or men are optional. I mean, you hear that in some circles these days, or maybe we should just get rid of men. You hear some feminists talking on podcasts that, they're excited for the science that's going to allow them to reproduce without needing men. Yeah, it's kind of a crazy world that we live in.
Yeah, there's been no time in history where men have been removed from a society and that has worked out. We see this in the history of warfare where when large amounts of, strong, able-bodied men are killed or maimed, that culture goes into decline because then women must assume masculine roles and the children suffer the most. And that's a great stat you pulled up. I actually heard this recently. Single father homes have the same outcomes statistically as two parents. But when the father's missing and it's a single mother home, those children are much more likely to create destructive habits and behaviors. And that should tell you everything you need to know right there. This litany that you know, shout out to the classical feminists, by the way. Like the first wave of feminism was quite healthy. It was just about like, I don't know if there's a quality of outcome, but they wanted equity. It's like, hey, men and women, we're 50-50 here in terms of like holding the front line of society. We should probably reflect that in policy. So I don't have a problem with that. The postmodern feminism, this fourth wave of feminism, is extremely toxic and detrimental because this whole idea that the future is feminine, men should all, be neutered or, we don't need men. Let's just raise kids on our own. Let's become the president. Let's become whoever. Women in the military. Women can do anything. This is an absurd notion that was also present, by the way, in the Roman Empire at the tail end of its fall. Is this idea of gender confusion and just eliminating meaningful and healthy differences in the strengths of men and women and the masculine and feminine, which all, indigenous societies would laugh at. That's like, what are you talking about? Like, of course, men and women are necessary in the tribal dynamic to create healthy children and do commerce and, create a society.
Yeah. Simon, sorry.
Toxic femininity. How dare you, Hans?
Yeah, Simone de Beauvoir, who's the wife of Sartre, who's hailed as one of the early feminists. Very powerful woman, beautiful writing, and great feminist. And when she was asked what she was most proud of in her life, she said that I was the wife to Sartre. I was a good wife to my men, and I think that says everything. If you read her, it's fantastic, and I understand it's pivotal the role she played and feminism played. And then you tell that to feminists of today, like she was most proud and fulfilled that she had been a great wife to Jean-Paul Sartre, which is incredible to me.
So, Kevin, I would love to hear, about your upbringing. Did you have a father in the home? Did you have strong male role models? What is your connection to this crisis personally? Why have you chosen this path of being a men's coach? But maybe you can start us off back in the early days.
Yeah, so I was raised, middle class Catholic here in Texas, and did have my father and mother there. They definitely had their issues, and their marriage was far from perfect, which would later lead me to kind of dive into relationship dynamics and try to understand that. But yeah, a lot of my male role models, I was very blessed. I'm an Eagle Scout, so I went all the way through Boy Scouts. So that was really where I kind of first cut my teeth, just being surrounded by men, being pushed into leadership, because a lot of my mentors in the Boy Scouts were like, "Yo, you need to lead the young boys. They look up to you." And so also learning survival skills and backpacking, hiking all over the U.S. and Canada. That was a really beautiful experience, and I'm very grateful for. But in terms of like how to be a man, the best I got was, the locker room talk of playing, American football and soccer and middle school and high school, which was extremely weak and just ridiculous. And so I was a bit of a shy boy, and I was very interested in things like literature and film and, psychology and history. So I didn't really get along with, the jocks. So, I was bullied, and, I fit in the best I could. I was very much the class clown. So that's where I learned a lot of my comedy skills. But moving forward into university,
Probably some truth-speaking habits.
yeah, exactly. Um, so yeah, basically to understand my kind of family dynamic, which was far from perfect and emotionally very dysfunctional. I got interested in psychology and philosophy, and that's what I majored in university. Thought I was going to do my PhD, but just mainly because of Catholicism, I was terrified of hell and having sex before marriage. So this led to a high school sweetheart cheating on me and just completely failing in the feminine field. Although I had girlfriends, I was just completely confused and in a lot of guilt and repression and shame. Um, and so this kind of led me to try to figure, like, self-diagnose, like, what the fuck's going on, which is where psychology came in and was so fascinating to me. But going into the PhD track and applying to schools, I never actually started doctorate work, but just seeing the complete anxiety and insomnia and the depression of these grad students, and then feeling it myself, I was like, there's got to be more to this. And I kind of had my red pill moment, first encountering psychedelics. I was also, training martial arts. I had started to study yoga a little bit, and just kind of the Eastern pull caught me. And I was like, well, fuck all of this. And I, moved to California, met a woman there, entered another dysfunctional relationship, and kind of got swept up in, freestyle, open mic, poetry culture, music culture, Burning Man. And that was really where I kind of caught the entrepreneur bug as well. And so, moving forward, that didn't work either. In California, I was like, I was working at a university in a desk job. And that's kind of when I really put my chips in and sold everything and backpacked through Asia. And, I studied in India, did my yoga teacher training, backpacked through Nepal, really went on like a spiritual hero's journey. And when I returned to the States, I was very blessed to come into the orbit of Elliot Hulse earlier in his career. So he became a huge mentor. Elliot Hulse was deeply involved in the Osho lineage of active meditation. And he was also, hardcore into men's work, Robert Bly, all the old school kind of American men's work. So I went to many retreats with him, kind of became, one of his students. And that's when I fully kind of found men's work and started actively practice it, as well as, started coaching, facilitating workshops, retreats, going to masterminds, just getting super deep into biohacking, masculine philosophy, masculine practice, and doing a lot of healing work. So I was kind of in the gauntlet of retreats for a long time. And then later, Albert, who's here in Austin, had found me online, and he invited me to facilitate at the first 3 Sacred Sons events, which was another beautiful, incredible journey, just seeing them and how they've grown so much. And my co-authors as well. So my book, Sex, Masculinity, God, shout out to Cadell and Daniel. They're my 2 co-authors I wrote that book with. We got kind of swept up. They're more academics. I think, yeah, Daniel has his master's, Cadell has his PhD. And then I got involved in the European men's movement. So we went and presented our book and facilitated at Manifesto and the European Men's Gathering, as well as Mannsein in Germany. So I kind of got to see both sides of American and European men's work. And, just my first client actually was a man who asked me to coach him. Like, I was still training and getting certified. And so life kind of found me in this. I never set out to, do men's work, of course, but have been very blessed in my journey, and really just my heart is lifted, and I have a lot of hope seeing how much that movement has caught on here in Austin and elsewhere in the world.
What a great adventure. Yeah, I have a lot of questions about it. I'd like to ask you some about it. I grew up also with the Boy Scout track and religious track as a Mormon, and I had a lot of father, uncles, grandfathers, a lot of men in my life. And then my parents divorced at 14, and my mother went to war against everything, having to do with men, and she kind of became the masculine figure in the house, and I was the oldest son, and I had to fight for my own manhood. Ended up running out at 17 and going out west to live with an uncle. But And I also found my way to Austin, lived there for 17 years, as I told you. But my first men's thing was the Sterling Men's Weekend. I don't even know if that's still around. Have you heard of that?
I have not.
Mm. It was yeah, it was a powerful event. You're sworn to secrecy as much as I'd love to talk about it. But so yeah, well, tell me a little bit more about your Asian adventure. How long did that last, and was it just India and Nepal? And what yeah, what was illuminating about that journey?
Yeah, I mean that was really like, I remember being in a hyperbaric chamber. I had beautiful friends in the Bay Area when I was living in California who later became business partners. We ran a retreat company, and they were obsessed with I did do a stint working for Bulletproof as well, and it's in its heyday. So the whole biohacking culture and entrepreneur culture. And I remember reading the 4 Hour Work Week. So Tim Ferriss in this oxygen chamber, and it just hit me like a lightning bolt. I was miserable working 50 hours a week at a UC school, drinking, just like smoking all the time, just being just adrift. And the entrepreneur like personal development bug caught me, and just reading in that book about geo arbitrage, like making USD abroad and living in a beautiful like tropical place where like health and wellness are readily available. Often their systems are better than even the states at much lower cost. And so that was like kind of the moment I was like, all right, like I need to travel. I hadn't really traveled up until that point besides camping and wilderness stuff. So yeah, I bought a one-way ticket to Thailand and lived there for a better part of a year, studying like Tai Chi and Qigong, studying, um, Eastern medicine and writing. At that time, I thought I wanted to be just a writer. So I had started a blog, and I was like, this will be my entrepreneur thing, living off savings, just backpack lifestyle. And the woman I had been dating that had come with me, we actually had a falling out and breakout during that trip. And that hit me like a ton of bricks. And it was like right back where I was, after these other failed relationships. And so that was really the time I started to get very red pilled in terms of like everything I thought about the way I'm living is just like it's false, as evidenced by the results. And so I had a few psilocybin experiences that were extremely intense, alone, and that I was obsessed with Terrence McKenna at the time and studying shamanism and depth psychology. I was reading Jung. I was just kind of on this like self study bender in Asia. And I remember I went all through Thailand, Laos, Malaysia, and I ended up in Kuala Lumpur. And I got super sick, like a purge, classic food poisoning, Asia belly. And it was in that moment, alone in this hostel, like shivering with cold sweats, just like fucked up, depressed. I was like, what am I doing? That's when I was like, I had been studying yoga and qigong. I wanted to go become a qigong teacher because I loved it so much. But in that moment, I actually decided to go to India. And it was just a lot of synchronicity and meaningful coincidence. And that's really where like I really discovered more of myself, just being in that kind of ashram environment, just training practice all day. And I was very blessed because the yoga teacher was pretty hardcore Ashtanga, like military discipline, but the guru, or like the kind of the philosophy teacher, was very much into Osho and Krishnamurti, and he was just like, it was like drinking from a fountain. Like I would go in between classes and even like miss sleep just to speak with him and like be in his presence and like just absorb, which would later line up with working with Elliot Holst and his mentor, who actually lived with Osho. And then the Himalayas was like kind of my pilgrimage after that. And so, I always recommend, especially to men, but to women too, American culture, a lot of people don't even have passports, and travel, especially traveling alone, which of course Europeans will know. The American mind can't really comprehend how valuable it can be. And so in
Yeah.
that time, my filling journals and reading and just putting myself in a foreign country and meeting travelers, and there's so much inspiration I gained at that time. And I would go on. I lived in Bali for many years. I lived in Tulum. I've lived in Costa Rica. So I was a digital nomad for many years. But in terms of men's work and what I discovered, I was also studying Campbell. I was obsessed with the hero's journey. and trying to enact it in my own way. And of course, like the hero's journey must end with the return home. So when I returned to the States and moved back to LA, that's when I really started to go all in. And at first, I was a yoga teacher, then I was a personal trainer, and then I actually got certified as a coach. And that's when I formed that retreat company with the friends I had made there before. And we kind of found our own way into men's work and got swept up into it because, this was before like Goggins and Jocko and all these guys got really big. This is like 2015, 16. And this is like right at the beginning of Jordan Peterson. So, Elliot Hulse was a huge mentor at that time. And because I was so into the Eastern mindset of, non-duality, being more holistic, the Osho lineage and that kind of like practice of his meditations really was like combined with men's work by Elliot Hulse and then being in his orbit, kind of set up the next several years and was a super powerful journey I'm so grateful for.
Now he seems to have not seems to. He's taken quite a turn in the last
Yeah.
couple. I'm curious what you think about that because, and I'm not that well versed on what he does, but I think that you hear a lot of men online on social media, especially more in the, let's say, I don't know, the red pill space, but dismissing vulnerability or sharing any kind of emotions with women. And, I have my own take on this, but a lot of what, Elliot Hulse used to do with his, like, he would demonstrate like the emotional release stuff. And some of that was like Osho inspired. But yeah, he's kind of taken this hard turn. I don't know. What do you make about that? And of men, I mean, he's not the only one. There's a lot of men struggling to find out who should we be as men, how should we show up, and what's needed of us.
Yeah, I mean, I still have a lot of respect for Elliot, and having spent so much time with him in that season, I can understand, although I don't necessarily agree with what he's doing now, what he's doing. He's kind of always been extreme. If you go way back in the day, when I first encountered him, it was Brain Slave No More, one of his classic viral videos where, so Osho was borrowing from Wilhelm Reich and Alexander Lowen. So they were the carriers of bioenergetics. So it's all about issues in the tissues, body keeps the score, right? So he's in this video on on a massage table, just having a tantrum and just going to this crazy emotional release. That was my first like peek into him in like 2013. Little did I know that we would be meeting him at a retreat and then working with him for years. But he's an extreme guy. He's a hardcore guy. When he picks something, he goes all in. He went into strongman, tore his bicep, like tore his whole ligaments and arm. And then when he found Osho, he went all in on that. And so I was with him in that season, which I can say in that season, he was very much taking on the mantle of like a father figure. I was a little bit, we were older. I was like, 25 something, but they were like 18-year-old men at these retreats. And I saw his care and his compassion, even as we went through these crazy initiations and fasts and practices together. I do think since, let's say, the MAGA crowd and Trump and like the culture shift of like the extreme effeminate, woke agenda. Well, I mean, it seems to be an agenda to me. It's a whole rabbit hole. Like how much of this is just, oh, people are changing and how much of it is like, this is like being rolled out. I think in response to that, he kind of reclaimed Christianity and went hardcore the other way. And I know he's quite triggering to people. And I find it pretty comedic. I think if you actually like were with him in person, it's very different than what he's putting on videos. And I know he's now helping, men battle addiction and kick like, porn, weed, alcohol, and things like that. While being quite Christian in his views. So there's a lot of guys like that. I went down the pickup artist and red pill community rabbit hole at one point, and there's definitely some diamonds in the rough there of just helping. Because the way I see it is most men, especially most men I work with, are way erring on the side of people pleasing and just being completely afraid to harm anyone, especially women. And that's why they're not chosen for promotions. That's why the woman is cheating on them or leaving them or not respecting them. So some of that stuff, obviously taken with a grain of salt and keeping it connected to the heart is powerful. Learning how to be assertive and strategic and logical. But yeah, taken to the extreme, I see that movement that I think Elliot's kind of a part of now, and others. I think it does some harm because they're throwing out like some of the vulnerability pieces. They're throwing out the nuance and context of just being like an antibody that's like a reaction to the hyper feminized culture. So they're going hyper masculine in a very like low sense. And I still know men to this day that I think work with him and other men in that field, um, make masculinity great again and all this. I think they are benefiting from it because they understand how to apply it. I do worry about the boys or the younger men that are starting there, and they're going to need to kind of course correct later. And so that's why it's really important that movements like Sacred Sons and the Mankind Project, the European Men's Movement, take a much more holistic approach and can bring it back to balance.
Yeah, we interviewed quite a diverse range of men doing men's work, from some of the Red Pill founders to some of the kind of somewhat original guys in the pickup artist space, to European Men's Movement. Tried to have quite the diverse audience, and not everyone liked it, and probably some didn't share about the summit that they were in because he also interviewed these people. My personal take is that men showing up to be a mentor and a leader and be there for other men is just a positive thing, and we're all on our journey.
Mm-hmm.
Like Elliot, we're all learning and growing and changing, and just because you disagree with where someone is right now, the direction they're pointing in, I mean, to me, that's no reason to cut them out or to put them in the corner. but better to honor them for the stand that they're making, and contribute to their journey. Hans?
Yeah, I mean, I'm notoriously staying outside of a lot of the wars, but what I've seen in all these interviews, the common denominator, what I see in these great men is not necessarily what they preach, but their care. They give a fuck about other men. And that is, to me, an outsider that I am, I think that's the most important. And that's the greatest gift that you can give to another man, as an elder, as an ally, as a brother, to actually give a fuck, to actually care. And you spoke about Elliot Hulse, that's what you saw also, his care. And I think that's the common denominator of men doing great work in this field.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of one of the core symptoms is that the lack of eldership and mentorship. Like that was something I think the people who demonstrated it the most were the European Men's Movement. So Alexander Bard, he's kind of the bad boy of Sweden. He's a big figure in that movement, philosopher, author, and very intense with his views. But I've never seen elders care so much about sharing, those tips and tricks, the course correction, the compassion, giving brutally honest but loving feedback to younger men. And I've seen it in the other dynamics as well, in Sacred Sons and some of these other men's work movements. Philip Folsom is another brother I really respect, that I know y'all had, with K4 and what they're doing. Joshua Werner, his business partner. I had a lot of these guys on my podcast, and that's something that I still need mentorship, but I'm in this weird position as a young man. I'm 34, where I'm mentoring men older than me, some of them, because they don't have a fucking clue about men's work or how to be a powerful masculine force. So that mentorship and eldership, that is one of the biggest things that we need. In the village context of like Dunbar's number, it wouldn't just be you and your dad in like your domicile. You'd have uncles and grandfathers and other men teaching you how to hunt, teaching you skills, giving you advice on women, giving you advice on how to manage resources. This is the saddest thing is when I poll men across my channels or talk to them, you know, I'd say a staggering percentage, over 80%, don't even have male friends, let alone a men's circle. And so
Yeah.
that's one of the first areas I would apply pressure, is be like, you know, okay, you don't have men, you need to find them. And it's like, well, I can't find a man that's leading a men's circle near me, blah, 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 which is great. Things like this summit, it's like, find the others. You know, it may not be in your small town if you're not living in a place where there's a lot of this stuff going on, but, you know, find 2 other men. You can start a men's circle with 3 men and just start meeting and talking about what's real in a third space that's not with your woman or at work, having beers with the boys, watching the game. That is one of the key things, is like, we just need to recreate male bonds and male companionship, and mentors and elders are like a big part of that.
Yeah, we've basically been robbed as those all male spaces have been stripped away from our Western culture, especially in America. I've traveled the world, as Hans has, for the last 15 years, and in a lot of other cultures, the all male spaces are preserved and they're honored, and it's even like a daily thing. Like in a lot of the Middle East, at night there's only going to be men out. You know, the women are home hanging out doing whatever they're doing, but the men are, you know, out having a tea or a smoke or whatever, and that's just their time to just debrief and, you know, let out the stress of the day before, you know, going back into the battlegrounds the next day. And in 2010, I visited a friend in Uganda, and he had named his little boy after me. And his little boy didn't know his dad separate from his uncles. Like it wasn't like dad and then uncles. It was just like, here's the men in my family that care about me. Now, there was something beautiful about that. I mean, well, anyway, yeah, I'd love to hear. And yeah, that's a kind of a big theme of the summit. And what we're seeing is, you know, men are starving for the brotherhood and mentorship of other men, and a lot of men are just stepping into, okay, there's no way I can do this around here, so I'll start a men's circle, I'll start a men's group, I'll start something, and it's a beautiful thing. But yeah, we are all kind of just making it up on some level because it hasn't been passed down to us, you know, in this modern society. I think that a lot of us have grown up with fathers and other men in the world that we see that we don't respect and we don't admire because they've made too many compromises. They've lost their voice, they've lost their balls in many respects, and we look at them, we're like, I don't want to be like them, I don't want to take their advice. Somehow they signed up for the whole program, and I'm not down with that. So yeah, it's a very interesting time, I think, to be a man. And I'm curious about the European men's organizations. We interviewed Paul Lloyd Robson, is it?
Yeah.
Manifesto.
Paul was the head of Manifesto.
Yes.
Paul.
Yeah, me too. That was a great interview. And Father Michael mentioned you as well. He was excited to see that you were coming on our interview.
Father Michael actually just texted me when I posted about this. I love Father Michael. Another Texan.
Yeah, another Texan. And both of these guys are really taking the turn into not just religion, but what's the word I'm looking for? You know, the Orthodox Christianity.
Yeah.
And because it's more, you know, I think a lot of men are saying this is a more masculine tradition. There's actually an established tradition of men being masculine, of rituals, of structure and stability. And I think it's very fascinating because I left my religion, you know, kind of in the dust, and slowly over time I'm realizing how much I was given through that religion that I'd kind of thrown out, and I'm slowly reclaiming. But I'm nowhere near on, okay, I want to I don't know, sign up to the next religion. So, yeah, I'd love to hear more of your insight into what's going on over in Europe and how it's different than what you see in America.
Yeah, I mean, I find it very fascinating. I mean, Catholicism, like I was fully absorbed in it. Like there was a point where I was like, maybe I should be a priest, or I should, because I was a lector at mass. So I would go up and read, the readings, and I was getting all this praise in the religious kind of education um, school, that was part of my church. And, I was nurtured by reading like, Psalms and Ephesians. I was reading Revelation and asking questions that the teachers were kind of like, hey, like, we don't talk about that. Let's just be a good boy and like say your prayers. So I was, and later I discovered, the Nag Hammadi scriptures and Gospel of Thomas and the kind of the Gnostic Christianity. But this is what happens in an empire or a civilization when it's been stripped of its roots and its grounding. People, especially men, will start grasping at older traditions to find a base. And so what's happening with Orthodox Christianity and and the European men's movement, Father Michael, Paul, a lot of these guys are going headlong into it because Orthodox Christianity is still very much patriarchal in the good sense, around mentorship and honor and stoicism and fasting and ritual and symbol. That's very rich. And there's almost a mystical component to it. And it celebrates men and strong men being good husbands and fathers and mentors. So I understand that. And, Eliot's doing it in his own way with Catholicism. And I've seen a lot of born again, really since 2020. It's a phenomenon, because I've been in the full, spiritual community, people doing ayahuasca ceremonies in their apartments and going into channeling aliens and all kinds of crazy shit with crystals and feathers. And that's a big difference. Like right away, I've noticed, Sacred Sons and some of the American men's movements are very much pulling from the indigenous traditions. So they're very interested in medicine work. They're very interested in, the Red Road, Sweat Lodge, which I find beautiful. I've found a lot of value in that. And there is kind of this new age component to it in the best sense, where it's like we'll pull from other traditions. It's very much about spirituality. Religion isn't really celebrated. It's very inclusive. It's very, spiritual, not religious. Whereas the European men, it's very much the extremes where, Europe's very secular. So America is this Christian country. In Europe, it's secular. Like they're much more interested in Hegel and Sartre and, Heidegger than they are in the Bible. But there is a contingent of men that are going very hardcore into Orthodox Christianity. And I think it's serving them. I do see the dangers of dogma and ideology, because I see myself as a lover of wisdom. I'm aiming at the good, the true, and the beautiful in like the Platonic sense. And, I'm a philosopher. I love that tradition, which is why I love, East and West. And I've kind of had my buffet of favorite thinkers. But I also see the danger of going into a dogma and ideology, because it can form this in group, especially among men. Men naturally want to bond. The ways we can bond now are what? War and sports. So the religious bonding, almost like the monastic vibe, is something I saw more there, which is grounding them. And I think it's beneficial. And neither way is right or wrong. It does change who your companions are, though, because if you're very much into the Christian flavor of men's work, you're probably not gonna, sit in a rapé ceremony or do some chants on a buffalo drum. So it's very much like you kind of have to pick your niche, and there's just a vast system of men's work. And my fear would be that it devolves into ideology and in and out groups. But the hope is that, these rich traditions, Christianity, indigenous culture, Eastern culture, they all have their own strains of masculine vision. And so whatever, any man listening to this or in the summit, whatever your kind of DNA is, because we all remember in our bones what it is to be a man and how to relate to the world as a man. But as you go through your initiation, as you go through your entry into a brotherhood, you will have to choose the men that are resonant with you. And so I think the thing that breaks my heart the most, I don't see it that often, but it does happen, is men that go to a men's group or one of these retreats, and they're like, "This is all bullshit. Like, I thought this was supposed to be healing men, and like, I'm in a divorce and a failed marriage. I'm in debt. I'm addicted. This is not what I wanted. I need some real practical stuff, not this woo." And that's where, there's different strokes for different folks.
So you've kind of been all around, it seems, and have embraced or welcomed all these kind of different facets of men's work and the men's movement and personal development and spirituality. Have you carved out a niche for yourself? And if so, what is it?
That's something I'm in discovery around right now. It's been a big death rebirth for me this year in my coaching business, because the last 2 years I went all in on polarity and intimacy and relationship dynamics. So when I was interested in a PhD in psychology, I was actually I studied under David Buss and some of those guys at UT. Super hardcore evolutionary theory. So seeing mating dynamics and sexuality through that lens, which there's a lot of truth there. It does lose the heart because it can become very heady and like sexual market value, and the red pill culture runs with this stuff. They love it. So that kind of was more of my style. I wasn't calling in a lot of the spiritual twin flame stuff, although I had my own experiences with that. It was much more grounded in like neuroscience, biology, and practicality. Also calling in the energetics of tantra and deep sexual union, and also high level communication. That's kind of the primary thing I was niching into. At this time, I am actually more interested, and that's what's going to happen in the new year, of repositioning to work more with men, although I do work with a lot of women, but being forward facing more with men and moving back towards, which I haven't done really since 2020, towards more business, creative support for men, and also helping do more in-person events, especially around men's work. As much as I feel like your mess is your message, or your wound is your gift, my wounding was around sexuality, like experiencing betrayal, experiencing, just being inept with women. And that caused me to just obsess over that and study it. But what I found is, in that space, there is a rising kind of movement in the polarity industry with just a lot of bad behavior. And integrity is so critical to me. And also I'm interested in working with people that have, like, if I'm going to spend, go all in with a one-on-one client, for example, I want someone who's gotten past that trauma layer, at least at a basic level, and is making impact in the world. And what I've found working with a lot of clients and relationships, and even, doing dating coaching, like auditing their dating profile and, helping them get on dates. I excel at it, but I'm not enjoying it, because the amount of debris and just heaviness around it, especially for women. Women are just struggling with this narrative that there are no good men, which of course there's truth in that. But I've grown fatigued with the polarity industry and polarity coaching as it exists today, as it rises in popularity. And unfortunately, there is a lot of bad behavior and ridiculous notions that border on ideology around, this is the only way to be polarized, and this is the only way to do da 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 da. Because I've deeply studied David Data, and his work was super meaningful to my life, and as well as John Wineland, his protege. But that's no longer my path, and that's become clear this year.
Interesting. Yeah, it's I had a friend of mine tell me a few years ago, Claire Zammit, she's married to Craig Hamilton. He's a big spiritual teacher online. And she does like a lot of work with helping women achieve business success. Like her brand is like Feminine Power. And anyway, she told me that, Michael, if you're going to do some kind of event like this, and bring in a lot of men and have it be successful, it has to be about money, because men don't want to pay for relationship stuff. They're not really that going to invest that much in personal development stuff, but if you're teaching them how to make more money, Like that's that's what it has to be. And I mean, so far with the numbers of this event, you could definitely map that on and say you're damn right. Um, and as I look to 2024, if I do a bigger, better version of this, there definitely will be a wealth component. I mean, and it's something that men have to master, men have to, be responsible for and powerful with. Um, what has been your experience as far as what men are willing to sign up for? Some of the guys that we've talked to have said that, yeah, like men don't want to pay for therapy, but they'll pay for training. You know,
Yeah.
like they leave with a skill. They want to leave with a new ability. They don't just want to sit and talk about the past and all of this.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much truth in this, and it's part of why I've kind of been reading the writing on the wall, and also just tuning in with my own heart around where is my heart in this. We had a joke in one of my programs with my support coaches that it was just the evidence in the program. Men have money problems, women have relationship problems, which obviously women, it can be vice versa. It's facetious, but there's truth in it, because without a doubt, well, it's, I guess there's been a few exceptions, so I can't say it's a rule, but without fail, a woman will come to me and be like, "How do I get my husband, my boyfriend, to do this work?" You know, and I always tell them it's like they need to choose it. Do not force them. Do not manipulate them. I need to talk to them solo, and then I need to talk to y'all together before we could ever work together successfully. And so, most of my following via the numbers on Meta is women. It's like close to 60-40, sometimes 70-30. And women, paradoxically, are some of the greatest consumers of men's work content, because that's the kind of men they want to relate to. And of course, for men, this feels terrible, especially a more mainstream man who hasn't really touched personal development. He sees therapy as, oh, it's broken, I'm fucked up. It's there's shame involved, and coaching gets lumped into that. So a lot of these women will be like, we need to coach, we need to do polarity, we need to increase blah blah blah. And the man's like, what is this? I don't want to pay thousands of dollars for this, or I can't invest time and energy in this. It's sometimes it's an ego thing, sometimes it's a practical thing, and I level with those men. One of my mentors early on, when I was first kind of cutting my teeth as an entrepreneur, he was like, Kevin, if you are going to charge a man a few $1,000s, he needs to know that he's going to make that back. So like these, in Bulletproof, and I was doing sales for them. I was at these masterminds with billionaire marketers, Alex Sharfin, Tony Robbins, Peter Diamandis, Joe Polish. Like, I was really privileged to be on the front lines back then. And that's how those guys think. And strangely, they never touched a polarity book or understood relationships. Their wives were loving and similar to Simone de Beauvoir. Like, they loved being the partners of those men, because those men were all in on purpose and success and wealth. So there is a dynamic there that's very real. Men thrive when they're celebrated and respected. Respect is the currency for men. How do they get respect? By being those protectors and providers. And providence obviously is emotional. It's presence, it's love, but money is a thing. And as the world economy and markets are in like a very crazy tenuous position right now, most of the men I talk with, that come for, well, I need relationship coaching, or I'm like, dating sucks, or my relationship or marriage is kind of struggling. When you dig down, money's in there, but what is money always tied to? Purpose. How do they make money? Do they enjoy it? And do they feel they're doing meaningful work in the world that's getting respect from their woman, in the boardroom and in the bedroom? So I do think that, well, your notion of like including more of the wealth and like kind of the training mindset, this is what really speaks to men, especially men that would be seeing something like this in a men's workspace, in a personal development space. There is a lot to that. It's crazy to see women who are highly successful financially, but are chronically single and lonely. And then you
Mhm.
see men who are quite emotionally intelligent. They would make an amazing partner, struggling with money. This is a weird dichotomy that I've, kind of unearthed through talking with hundreds of people over the past few years and working with a lot of them. There is something to that. And I think part of this is after COVID, with the rise of remote work and everyone being at home and like people losing their jobs or their careers shifting. Now millennials are having the quarter life crisis, where our parents' generation, my parents will have the midlife crisis and like buy a Corvette and get a Latina girlfriend or whatever, whatever. But now millennials, young men, are in the quarter life crisis, where they've put all their chips in on a career they hate and they're miserable, and their sex life and love life is suffering as well. So you do have to speak to what their actual pain is in real time.
Yes. All right. Beautiful. Hans, anything? And then I want to ask Kevin for some closing words to men out there. But just before I do, I want to just remind everyone that our Encore weekend for our men's summit, we're talking to 70 great men. Kevin is one of them. Hans is one of them. And you can participate in all of that for free over at callingallmensummit.com. And we'd love to have you, and there's all kinds of bonus trainings, video bonus trainings, and live bonus trainings from some of our guests. Kevin would be invited to do that as well. And so Hans?
I had this question early in our conversation. You talked about the hero's journey and coming home, and I was interested in how that looks in the hero's journey, how it looks for you returning home.
Yeah, it's ongoing for sure, and hero's journeys just are cyclical. So I'm probably embarking at the beginning of the call to adventure of the next one right now. But for me, I was very much rejecting my heritage. Like I got sucked up in the liberal thing before it kind of became insane like it is now, where I was like proud that I was moving to California and leaving Texas, this like backwards, I mean, Austin doesn't count because Austin's incredible. Obviously it's an oasis, it's unique. But, I was raised in Houston, and, at that time I was very much rejecting being a Texan, being Catholic, being conservative, on and on. And so I embraced, the new age, the yogic philosophy, the Taoist philosophy. And I was kind of running from that, was what I realized later. And so for me, the return home, in the hero's journey, the hero, gathers mentors, maybe even enemies, slays the dragon or demon of his pain in that death and rebirth experience. And then a lot of heroes will refuse the call to return home because they want to live in their like magical world that they've kind of carved out. And I definitely have that, like struggling to come home. And I think that was part of, being a digital nomad for many years, even moving back to Asia and living in Bali for many years, living in Central America. And for me, it's like the elixir of those experiences, my duty, and the place where I will have the most efficacy in applying it is in the situation in which I was created. So for me, like I've fully moved back to Austin this year with my beautiful partner, and been reintegrating men's work, my coaching business, my art, my voice in the community here, and also super proud to be a Texan. Like I think Texas is one of the most bullish places to be in the world right now, specifically Austin. But yeah, for me, it was very humbling to actually realize that my upbringing, growing up, camping in the Texas wilderness and being this poker playing kind of like, kid that felt very alienated and didn't fit in. Now stepping into that in my 30s, I'm so proud and have integrated a lot of that resentment and kind of alchemized it in that return home. And so that's something I see a lot of men who are running from their family dynamic or are trying to avoid their roots. At some point in their journey, it's going to be humbling and beautiful to actually come back and own that and love people where they're at, that, you may not agree with in the dynamics of where you were raised, but that is super powerful. And of course, it doesn't have to be like, moving back to where you're from, but energetically and emotionally, it's reclaiming that. And that's potentially the most important part of the hero's journey, that act 3, the return.
That's beautiful. Kevin, what would your message be to the men out there who are feeling lost or isolated? Who are struggling right now?
Yeah, any man who's watching this summit or video, now or later, if you feel like you don't have options, first off, you do. You're not a victim. The beautiful opportunity in a time of crisis and chaos, which, make no mistake, look anywhere in the world, the Middle East, Ukraine, America, everywhere. We're in a massive time of change, and it's only going to speed up and get weirder. The beautiful thing, though, is that means there's great opportunity. If you want to stand out, shoot your shot, really take risks, you can, but you cannot do it alone. The lone wolf starves. You need to find your pack. So if you feel alone, you need to reach out. What you got to understand is that other men, they feel good, and you serve them by giving them an opportunity to support you, even if it's just listening to you. That's the first step, is you have to reach out, find other men. If you are completely alone, you don't know where to start, pick a man on this summit and message them. Like, you can message me. I am happy to refer you, like send you wherever, give a piece of advice. You have to put out your hand. And this is the cultural indoctrination men have to break, that you can do it all by yourself. This individual myth of America and the West, where it's like, all right, we celebrate the lone man who overcomes all obstacles and no one helped him. That's bullshit. Any man you admire out there has infinite supporters behind him that you don't even see. No one's doing this alone. We're tribal creatures. And if you have a heart song, your soul is calling for you to do something. You're a musician, a creative, an artist. You want to start a business. You want to get into men's work and start leading. You want to study something. This is the best time to do it. There's not going to be a better time. Oh, well, let's just wait. Like, the election's coming, the economy, this, that. No. This is the best time to start. You're in a beautiful, opportunistic moment. And I really would pray that all the men take advantage of it and stand up tall.
Amen. What a beautiful message. Yes, I echo that. Kevin, where could a man reach out his lone wolf paw to you?
Yeah, I mean, you can find me. I'm streaming here on Facebook, YouTube. I'm on Instagram. My website is my name, kevinorosz.com. Send me a message. I will respond. And, if you want to read more about my book, you can find that on Amazon, Sex, Masculinity, and God. I have tons of free trainings on polarity, on masculinity, on purpose, high performance habits, and my Substack. So if you just search my name on Substack, it's my free newsletter. There's so many resources out there. I have online courses as well. I have a course for men. That's a 4-week training. So the information is infinite right now. You have this thing. So the information's there. I would say, like, actually implement and get a connection, a human connection with another man. And I'm happy to be that man if you have any questions.
Amen. Yeah, reach out to a man that you just feel a connection to. You feel like, hey, I think that this man would get me. I respect this man. Yeah, beautiful. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for your time on this Saturday. And Hans, also from Medellin. Hans, you've been through about 20 of these live streams now. Thank you for, joining around the campfire with us. And everyone, we're coming to a close on this summit. So we'll be here live on the Facebook page tomorrow for a couple of interviews, and back over on the main site for everything. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you to Kevin's audience, and to be continued.
Thank you, gentlemen.